is, like, low-key a horror series, like, right? For, like, the games. There are a whole bunch of unexplained ghosts. And I'm not talking about the ghost-type Pokemon. I'm talking about the random ghosts that appear and terrorize you. That white hand from Generation 1, it made it into the anime. Not the main anime that people know. I forgot the name of it. If Pokemon is a horror franchise, then the fans of the Pokemon games are the stupidest characters in any horror movie. You know, the one who hears a sound in the basement and goes, I'm gonna go check it out. Opens the door, you're saying don't open the door, and then they get killed instantly. Yeah, that's me. I am one of those people. I am the stupidest character in a horror franchise. I'm sorry. Hi, hello, I'm the Pterodactyl, and I have been a Pokemon fan for my whole life, and I've been playing the Pokemon games for, let's just keep it at over 10 years. I don't want to have to do the math. I don't want to remember how time passes by and everything is fleeting. What was I saying? Right, Pokemon! Despite playing Pokemon games for over 10 years, recently I have been very disappointed, and by recently I mean for the past few years. And, like, I'm not just disappointed in the, like, combat of the games, or, like, the difficulty of the games. Despite them giving me ways to pet and play with my Pokemon, I have felt less connected to any of my teams. Ever. Now more than ever. In Scarlet and Violet, I didn't care about any of my Pokemon on my teams. It was, like, it was weird. I cared about one Pokemon. It was a new Pokemon, Palmot. And that's because they gave it the insane ability to resurrect a Pokemon. That aside, I had no connection to my team while playing Pokemon Violet. And I wanted to look and see where things started to go downhill, for me personally, for the Pokemon games. Because I have never felt so bored battling. Like, these games are too easy, and they're not even making up for it by making me feel more connected to my Pokemon. So where are they going wrong? Also, I don't think Pokemon works as an open world experience. Like, 1, too many open world games recently. 2, it just doesn't work. Like, I skipped through so much of the area just to, like, unlock all the waypoints or whatever, and that felt wrong. Pokemon works best when it's an on-rails experience. You go from one gym to the next, completing things as you go along, and then the story unfolds as you go along. That doesn't work when you're allowed to go from one destination to the other. We are no longer telling a story. And, like, yeah, a lot of the Pokemon game story isn't too much, but at least we get a story of defeating villains as we go, and, like, oh, don't even get me started on the problem with Team Star or whatever. Aside from their hilarious hand gesture, they really pulled from Team Rocket on that one. But aside from that, they're nothing. They're absolute flops of villains. That aside, when looking back in my personal Pokemon experience, I found that my experience with the Pokemon games generally went downhill in Generation 7, aka Pokemon Sun and Moon, which is really sad because I was really excited for Generation 7. Like, I kept up with everything. I, like, had all the newest details on, like, what was being said, and I figure, like, after much introspection, I have figured it out. The reason why Generation 7, 8, and 9 fell flat for me specifically, and probably for a lot of people, is because they removed the HMs. Some of you just had, like, an instant fight or flight reaction to that, and the rest of you are confused for, like, 2 reasons. 1, why would that change it? And 2, what's an HM? So, for my very confused audience members, allow me to explain, because you are either new to playing Pokemon or new to playing Pokemon. and have only played the newer games. So let's go back to generations 1 through 6, and let's talk about what an HM is. So what is an HM? An HM is a variation of a TM. TM stands for technical machine. I'm like 90% sure. And a technical machine, it is a disc that I've always thought looked like a CD. According to the Pokemon manga, it is a bracelet. Either way, it is what you use to teach your Pokemon a new move. You find them in the overworld, you buy them from shops. TMs still exist to this day. I frankly mostly overlook them because, in my opinion, all the moves my Pokemon need will be learned when they level up. I'm kind of weird when it comes to my mechanics of battling, so don't listen to me. This is not good advice. TMs are one use, so you'll want to buy more or find more, and they'll stack, right? HMs, on the other hand, HM stands for hidden machine. I'm like 90% sure. You get an HM after beating a gym leader. And you can get it before then, just depending on which HM it is. But you won't gain access to being able to use that move until after you beat the gym leader it's associated with, it's linked with. HMs can be used an infinite amount of times, so you can teach any Pokemon an HM move. HMs are also hard to get rid of. I'm not talking about the HM itself. I'm talking about the move in your Pokemon slot. Most of the time, you have to go to a specific character in the game and have them remove the HM move, which is not the case for any other moves, at all. But what really makes or made HM special is the fact that they can affect the overworld. That meaning you can use them when you're not in a battle. Usually, they are used to get rid of small obstacles that are in your way. So, for example, there is a small tree. You click A to interact with the tree. It says, this tree looks like it can be cut. If you have a Pokemon that knows the HM move cut, you can use it, and that tree disappears, and you can continue forward. That is the true purposes of HMs. They work hand in hand with whatever terrain or obstacle that they are meant to get rid of. And what this does is it keeps you on rails in the game. This is how you stay on the specific path that the Pokemon games want you to stay on. Honestly, they were important generations 1 through 8 because all of those are on rails. All of those are a story. You go from this gym to this gym. It's a linear line of progress. Generation 9 decided to be open world, which is... I don't like it. That's the true purpose of an HM. Now that I've explained that, let me explain why people hated HMs so much. Because let me tell you something. When Sun and Moon announced that they would not have any HMs in them, people celebrated. Myself included. We were singing Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, the witch being the HMs, because they were terrible. Aside from HMs being roadblocks, or half of the roadblock that kept you on the rails of the game, which people got very tired of, it was very annoying. In your heart, you want to be able to traverse the world freely. That's what you want. We now know that did not work out so well for Pokemon, I'm just saying. But aside from that, to explain why HMs were so hated, I have to use a little bit of math and my trusty whiteboard. So as you can see, I have drawn myself a Pokemon party here. Your Pokemon party, or your Pokemon team, consists of 6 Pokemon. Total, maximum. You can only have 6 on you at any one time. Each Pokemon in your party can learn up to 4 moves. That's what my green squares indicate. You can swap these moves out with other moves using TMs or going to the move learner or when your Pokemon levels up and they have a chance to learn a new move. Simple. But that means that if you have a full party with full moves, which you most likely will, you are limited to just 24 moves in a battle. That isn't a lot when you, think about it. Everyone's used to it, so it's not a big deal. But, those are 24 moves that you have to carefully balance. Which moves deal damage, which ones have status effects, or if you're like me, you have a full 24 moves that only deal damage. And also you want to balance how many different types you have in your party, so that way you're not caught unprepared in a type matchup. You want to always have the advantage. And you have to do all of that with only 24 slots, 24 moves. It can get hard. And that is the fun of Pokemon, is that bit of strategy of figuring out which moves you feel work best and what your strategy is for fighting and battling. Now here's where HMs come in, because an HM takes up a slot. So let's say that my Eevee in this example has the move Cut. Suddenly I'm just down to 23 moves. But I can't get rid of Cut because 1, it's really hard and you have to find a specific person, and 2, without Cut, you can't move around the overworld freely. You could get stuck in a position. You won't be able to pass to the next area without Cut. So you need that move. You need that slot to be Cut, which is an HM. So, Generation 1 had the least amount of HMs. And, yeah, Generation 1 had 4 to 5 HMs. Just gonna put a little half on Vulpix. Why do I say 4 to 5 when the answer is clearly 5? That's because I do not believe that you need Defog or Flash in many scenarios. Flash is just for lighting up dark caves. So if you're planning to go into a cave, you bring that one specific Pokemon with Flash with you. Otherwise, it's a useless move. And Defog, I'm pretty sure only exists in Gen 4. And let me tell you something. I didn't know that Defog existed for a really long time, or that it was technically an HM. I just ran through that fog. Never stopped me. It wasn't until my second playthrough that I realized, oh, I can get rid of the fog. So yeah, the least amount is 4, technically 5 if you include Flash. What's the most amount? Seven to 8. From Generation 4, you need 7 to 8 HMs to get through the game. That is 2 whole Pokemon slots. 2 whole Pokemon worth of moves that are no longer available to you because they are instead taken up by HMs. It was a time. This need for just about 2 whole Pokemon worth of HM moves led to the, I can't say invention, the innovation, the reworking of the wheel. Because what do people do when they hit a wall and they need to push past it, but they can't do it on their own? That's right, slavery. So, usually, for most people, there were some people who were insane and who worked HMs into their main battle team. But for most people, what you did is you had 4 Pokemon that you would battle and level up. You'd have 6 Pokemon for your battling party. You would leave 2 of them in the Pokemon storage while going out with the other 4, and you would swap them around, make sure that they maintain equal levels. Or be like me and just have your starter be one-hitting everything. And then you would have those last 2, where those 2 Pokemon are designated your HM slaves. Those 2 Pokemon only know HM moves. Their role is to move you around the overworld, to get rid of obstacles. And that's what those two are for. You do not level them up, mostly. You do not have them in a battle unless you need to stall for time to revive one of your fainted Pokemon. All these things did was get sacrificed and use HM moves. So, already there's the frustration of whenever you want to level up your Pokemon, you have to take 4 of the Pokemon you want out into the forest to battle wild Pokemon and level them up, and 2 Pokemon that you don't intend to level up, that are just there so that way you can cut down a stupid tree and break a stupid rock, so that way you can move around freely. And then once you're done with that, you have to go back to the Pokemon Center, get those other 2 that you haven't been leveling up, and go out again. It's annoying. But imagine this for me for a second. Close your eyes and imagine this. You have just beaten a Pokemon gym. You're feeling good, you have your battle team, you're feeling good, you're ready to go on to the next place. You go on, you make it, you're almost there. Your party is exhausted and almost dead. And you make it out of this cave, because you're in a cave. You had to go through a cave. And outside of the cave is a small tree blocking your way. You go up to it, you press A. Oh no. You get the words. It's a small tree. It looks like it can be cut down. But you don't get the prompt to use cut. Want to know why? You want to know why? You left your HM slave that has cut all the way back at the Pokemon Center. Now you have 2 choices. Do you go all the way back? It took you too long to get to this point. Your team is almost dead. You're most likely going to black out and lose some of your money. Or do you teach cut to one of your battle Pokemon, wasting that slot until you can find the NPC who can let them forget it? Of course, there's the third option. You turn off your DS, turn it back on again, and then go through the gym battle again because you didn't save because you're stupid. This has happened. I'm the stupid one. I'm the one who turned off my DS to go back. But the rest of it is not me specifically. This has happened to people. And this is the infuriating thing about an HM. Just as much as those 2 wasted slots is when you forget to grab your HM slaves and you get to where you need to go, except there's one last obstacle and you don't have it. This is why HMs were hated. This is why when Sun and Moon announced, hey, we're going to have the Pokemon Rideshare instead, where you can summon a random Pokemon and it will, what was it? It was a Clydesdale will run faster. Machamp will just hold you in its arms, which, hilarious. Objectively, hilarious. I love that. But, when that happened, when we got Rideshare Pokemon announced, everyone celebrated. Myself included. It was a relief to be done of HMs. No more wasting a 1/6 to a 1/3 of your Pokemon moves on moves you wouldn't normally teach them. Now you can just pick the moves that work best for your battling style. You are free! But it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. Because what we thought was freedom was just an empty void. The grass was not greener on the other side, okay? There was no grass on the other side. On the other side was an empty void that we didn't notice. Because we went from Rideshare Pokemon to a bike. Just a bike. To then a legendary Pokemon that is a bike. Yeah, it was a time. It's been a time. So, let me go back and let me tell you about HMs from a different point of view. Eight years. It has been 8 years since Pokemon Sun and Moon released. 8 years since we got freedom from HMs, and I'm no longer celebrating. I'm looking back and going, why did you leave us? Why did it have to be this way? I miss HMs. And 8 years ago, I never thought I would say that. But I do. Pokemon games now are just kind of too easy. And you can't directly blame that on HMs going away. Like, no, they're programmed that the fights are easier. We can now see exactly which of our moves will be super effective on which Pokemon opponent. Like, it's taking away all of the thoughts behind everything. And while yes, I did not like trying to memorize an entire web of super effectiveness, it was kind of fun not knowing all the time, going like, oh my gosh, is this type super effective? I don't remember. Is it even effective? Is it not effective? I don't know. I don't remember off the top of my head. And there was that panic, and that panic brought joy. But this is not about that. This is about HMs. HMs brought a lot of strategy into Pokemon for reasons that I've already said. HMs meant that you went from 24 move slots to anywhere from 20 to 16 available strong moves, you know? That said, not all HMs were terrible. I love Surf, and I love Fly, and those are both HMs. So some of them are compatible, others are not. I don't like Strength. Then again, my entire strategy for Pokemon battling is hit first, hit harder. And it's worked. My friend has lost many times to me. How does it feel? How does it feel losing to my terrible, terrible strategy? I know he's watching this, and that's why I did that. Think about it. You now have what was already your strategizing, and now you have to strategize even further. You have to figure out if you're going to incorporate those moves into your normal battle party, because people did. People included HMs into their normal battle party and didn't have any HM slaves. Instead, it would look something like this, with a full team of 6 that are your viable Pokemon that you use to battle, with the HM spread out across them, allowing you to still have your battle party fully intact and never having to run into that stupid situation in which you don't have the correct HM. And I swear, so HMs actually, well, not entirely. I don't think HMs alone could bring up the strategy level in Pokemon. I think it could put pressure on you, and I think it did, and I think that's what we need. We need to have to use our brains more in a battle. And I think limiting how many moves that we would want and moves that we would like to have, and instead have these moves that we have to have, would help that. It would increase the amount of strategy that is needed for Pokemon, which is already a pretty simple thing. I say that not knowing at all how to competitively Pokemon, so. This next part, I would say it is just me. But I actually talked to my friend. The same friend who lost my terrible strategy, mind you. Get wrecked. I was talking to my friend about this, and he agreed. He had that idea separate from me. I was like, oh, I'm going to make my HM defense video. And he went, oh, what are your points? Because, I would like to add one. And then I told him my 2 main points, because, yes, there are only 2. And he was like, oh, okay, you already covered it. It was the second point. And I was like, yes! I think that HMs forced you to connect to your Pokemon more. which is a huge problem I've been feeling with Pokemon generations 7, 8, and 9. I did not connect with my Pokemon. And when looking at that, you can kind of trace it back to the lack of HMs, because it forced you to use very specific Pokemon. It forced you to rely on your Pokemon. And I want to tell you a story about my first time playing my first Pokemon game, Pokemon Platinum. So, back when I played Platinum, for the very first time, my first full playthrough of Pokemon Platinum, I remember I did not like Bidoof. I looked at it and said, why is there a beaver in Pokemon? As if we don't have rats and snakes. But I don't know, something about Bidoof struck me the wrong way. But I needed Bidoof, okay? I used Bidoof as my HM slave. And this was long before I knew what an HM slave was. That's how ingrained it is. People just instinctually do it. So Bidoof was my HM slave. But then I caught a Baneri. And I was like, oh, this is cute. I love it. Bye, Bidoof. I'm teaching this one all of the moves that you know, so that way Baneri can help me get around the world. And something weird happened. When I was putting my Bidoof away in the Pokemon storage system, I felt really, really guilty. Because without that Bidoof, I would have never made it far enough to catch that Baneri. And I don't know if it was just because I was young, but I think I would feel the same way today. I felt really, really guilty about leaving behind the Bidoof that had brought me so far behind. So what I did instead is I would swap them out. They had the exact same moves, except I think Baneri knew like one more fighting type move, and Bidoof had water gun or something. They knew the exact same moves, and I never trained up my Bidoof as much as I did my Baneri, because I did evolve the Baneri into a Lopunny, but I kept on switching between them, and I can't tell you why. It just felt right that they each get a turn, because they had both helped me at certain points, and I needed them. And then I remember I was going to fight the Elite Four, and I was looking at my battle party, because I didn't need any HMs anymore. It's just a straight 5-person marathon. You go one after the other until you get to Cynthia the champion. And I don't remember my whole team, but I do remember this. It was my starter, which was a Piplup, fully evolved into Empoleon. And I remember it actually had 3 HM moves itself. That being Surf, Waterfall, and Rock Climb, and I just generally thought those were good moves. I still kind of do. I do like the combination I had on that Empoleon. I then had my Noctowl, because I didn't know how good Staraptor was yet, and I liked the Owl, and that thing had Fly on it, so golden, and that's another HM. And then I brought both my Bidoof and my Lopunny, which Baneri evolved. They had almost the exact same moves, and they were both my HM slaves for the exact same things. And yet, it felt wrong for them not to be there when I finished my journey. I don't have that anymore. I've restarted Platinum many times. But my first team that I ever fought and defeated the Elite Four and the champion with, and the champion was Cynthia, by the way, considered one of the hardest champions, I won it with 2 HM slaves. 2 duplicate HM slaves. It was a hard-fought battle, but it felt so good to see the whole team that had brought me that far, and to be forever immortalized in the Hall of Fame. I didn't like Bidoof I now love Bidoof. Like, not my favorite Pokemon. And yes, the memes are partially part of it. But more importantly is HMs, having Bidoof as my HM slave, forced me to get to know Bidoof. And that's something that we don't see a lot. Because, let's be honest, a lot of the HM slaves that people used were early game rodents. That being your Rattatas, Sentret, Zigzagoon, Bidoof, my boy, Patrat, and Bunnelby. But usually, you'll see those Pokemon as the HM slaves. Now think about Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, and now Scarlet and Violet. What are the early game rodents of that one? And how many of them did you have a connection to? There will be outliers. Someone out there has to. Every Pokemon is somebody's favorite Pokemon, okay? That's just a fact. Scientifically, it's a fact. But, like, I know this. I caught Yungoos, Squovit, Tandemaus, and I caught all of them. I evolved them. And then I put them in the Pokemon storage and didn't touch them again. Because there was no need for me to go back to them. I had stronger and better Pokemon to have in my party. I didn't need them. Because there were no HMs to force me to need them. And with over 1,000 Pokemon, each Pokemon needs something to grab your attention. And with the early game rodents, low level, not strong Pokemon, you need that something. And that something for all of them from Gen 1 to 6 was an HM. Yeah, sure, you never battled with them, but they were there with you every step of your journey. You wouldn't have completed your journey without them. You relied on them outside of battle, which is one of the things that really endeared me to some of my Pokemon. Like, whichever Pokemon I had with Surf, I always felt like, oh, I couldn't have done this without them. They got me across the water. They're so good at surfing. Look at them go. And, like, you don't get that now. You didn't get that with rideshare Pokemon, which were just trained Pokemon that were essentially in a job to come in and pick you up and ferry you around. And I really, really noticed this when playing Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, which, overall, bad remake. Fell into the same trap holes, and it just wasn't good. They should have remade it with, like, a more of a platinum vibe. And also, like, expanding on the lore more, kind of like Oras did. But, in Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, they still have the areas where HMs are needed. But now, instead of having an HM and having one of your Pokemon cut down that tree for you, smash that rock for you, use strength to push a boulder out of the way for you, to fly you from place to place, to let you surf across water, it's a random Pokemon. It's a random wild Pokemon. And that's when I knew that Pokemon doesn't fully work without the HMs. I didn't get more connected to my Pokemon. I didn't need them for my journey outside of battling. All they became was battling. And that is one of the worst things for Pokemon to do. Because in a game full of cute creatures, where they say, guys, it's not like dogfighting, okay? The Pokemon, it's like play for Pokemon, okay? Okay? The worst thing you can do is take away the reasons and the instances where it doesn't feel like Pokemon are just for battling. And I think I found one of the missing pieces to the Pokemon formula. One of the things that they've been lacking. And that is finding ways to connect with your Pokemon where your Pokemon, your team specifically, can help you. And it's something we haven't seen in a while. We haven't seen it in 8 years. And so I say bring back HMs. And that is my defense of HMs in Pokemon. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Leave a like. Tell me why I'm wrong about HMs in the comments below if you disagree with me, because I'm sure someone out there disagrees with me. Someone has enough burning passion and hate about HMs left over from the old days that they'll say something like, "It'll happen."